And welcome to the Sci-Fi Christian Book Reviews, brought to you by the Sci-Fi-Christian.com. I'm Ben DeBono, here to talk to you today about Walter M. Miller Jr.'s The Canticle of Leibowitz. Before I get into the book review, I just wanted to make one note on the video quality from the last couple. I should have mentioned this last time in my review for, now I'm blanking on what I just reviewed. That's not good. Whatever I just reviewed a couple days ago, and it's completely out of my mind. But whatever I reviewed, I had it in this similar format. I'm actually recording off of my webcam because my camcorder here that I usually record off of has been having an issue where the lens cap, it's got like this auto lens cap thing on it, and see when I open that up, see if you can see there, yeah, it's like not opening all the way, so I have to get that fixed, and unfortunately the webcam, while it's decent, isn't quite the same quality in terms of audio and video and all that, so my apologies for that. I'm going to try and fix it here later tonight, but in the meantime, you are stuck with what we have here. So, putting that aside, hopefully it doesn't bug you too much that the video quality is not quite as good. Canticle of Leibowitz. Obviously a classic novel, considered a sci-fi classic, something that I should have read long ago. I don't know why I waited until now to read it, but I just finished it literally a few minutes ago and wanted to talk to you about it. So, before I get into my thoughts, I want to maybe express a little bit of confusion, if you will. Maybe that's not quite the right word, but you'll see what I'm getting at. Confusion, curiosity might be a better word, about why this book is so widely loved in the sci-fi community. Now, don't misunderstand me here. I love this book, but I should love this book. It's like, it's one of those books that I feel is written for me, okay? I'm a Catholic science fiction fan, and not only a Catholic, but a Catholic who is absolutely in love with the liturgy and with what that means, and with the secular structure of the Catholic faith in terms of its liturgical practices and theology and all that. And this book really dives to the heart of that. So it makes perfect sense why I would love this book. This book is all about what the sort of things I would like. But it's widely received in the sci-fi community at large, which, you know, contains Catholics, of course, contains religious types, but also contains a number of agnostics and atheists who don't really seem to raise a lot of objections against this book. And then even moving into religious and even Christian circles, you know, I've seen comments from people who are evangelicals, non-liturgical Protestants, Protestants in general, though liturgical Protestants I think would be a little bit more disposed to some of the material in this book, who also love this. So it kind of boggles my mind why somebody who's in a non-liturgical tradition would really get that much out of this, since a lot of the book's message seems to, at least to me, to contradict that tradition. And goes doubly so, maybe triply so, for those who are agnostic, atheist, nominally religious, what have you, who have really embraced this novel because it seems to wholeheartedly endorse a Catholic liturgical worldview. And that doesn't seem to be something that very many people in the sci-fi community are necessarily on board with. I mean, they might find it interesting, and maybe that's it. Maybe it's like a curiosity piece. But it doesn't seem to me that there's like this huge liturgical sci-fi movement out there. You know, I feel a bit on an island, to be quite honest, as a liturgically minded sci-fi Catholic, if you will. Of course, we're the Sci-Fi Christian. So I'm speaking of myself here, not of our network, which is hopefully, I hope between Matt and I, more ecumenical than just Leibowitz of Sci-Fi Catholic. But for myself, as a Sci-Fi Catholic, I do feel a bit out on an island here in terms of somebody who fits into what would seem to be the primary market of this book. By the way, Indeed Brewing Company here in Minnesota, their winter ale, not bad. Not my favorite, but not bad. A little bit, it's on Rate Beer, it's listed as an English strong ale, which the ABV is like only 6.5%, so that doesn't, I expect a strong ale to be closer to 10, but, whatever. It's a decent beer, especially on a good cold night like we've had here. I think it's like 10 below outside right now, so gotta love that winter ale. So anyway, I would love for somebody, if you're watching this and you fit into a category besides mine, especially if you're atheist, agnostic, or a Christian who would be part of a non-liturgical tradition, evangelical, Baptist, something like that. I'd be very, very curious to hear, if you're a fan of this book, what it is precisely that appeals to you. Because I don't quite see it, but I'd like to, if for nothing more than a point of curiosity. And hopefully be able to start some good ecumenical dialogue about the values and the messages in here. Okay, anyway, on to my thoughts of the book. This was a really fascinating read. And to me, as a liturgically minded Catholic science fiction fan, right up my alley. I loved the secular nature of this book. And I'm going to get into spoilers here with this one, because there's really no way to discuss it. But the structure of the book is essentially, we begin after a nuclear holocaust. We're in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, and then the book ends right as the next nuclear holocaust is beginning. So we go from one to another. It's the cycle. And this is very interesting to me, because it seems to me that part of what Walter Miller is doing here is he's telling a post-apocalyptic story that is ostensibly about the future, or, an imagined future, of course. But he's also retelling church history, if you think about it. What's going on with this book is that we have the opening of this newly constructed movement arising from a destroyed civilization, very much as the Catholic Church did in the wake of the fall of Rome. The Catholic Church is still very, very young as Rome falls, and we move into the Middle Ages, where and up to what's kind of an Enlightenment type period, or dawn of the Enlightenment, if you will, in the second book here in the series, as the church has been this wealth of knowledge and goodness and science and understanding, which it was. Believe it or not, for those of you who aren't students of church history, there's more to the relationship between church and science, and the fact that we weren't big fans of Galileo for a while got over, and we've hopefully rectified that. But the church was in the Middle Ages, this great boon for advancement. Why are most hospitals in this country Catholic hospitals? If you think about it, there's a sense of the Catholic Church did an enormous amount for the advancement of society. Now, you might not be Catholic, you might not be on board with anything the Catholic Church has, but that's just a historical fact. And then it kind of reaches this tension point in the Enlightenment, where science maybe wants to go in some directions that the Church isn't quite sure about, and wants to go there without the Church. And so there's this kind of tension between faith and science. And then we get this brilliant picture of modernism, where in the novel the church is on the brink of this nuclear holocaust, which at the time Miller wrote, we had the Cold War going on, so it seemed like we were there. Thank God seems to have backed off from that a little bit. But still, it's a brilliant picture of modernism, especially the debate that takes place between church and state about the issue of euthanasia here in the novel. When you think about modern debates between Catholics and Christians in general, but especially the Catholic Church and society, about issues like gay marriage, abortion, and all these hot button issues. And it's that the church has this one set of morality here that we believe in and we defend, and the world has this other sense of morality. And I think you see this, maybe most clearly in the whole gay marriage debate, that the church looks at it as we are defending this ancient institution that is created by God and is not ours to change. And the world is saying, no, this is an equality issue. And so we have these two good competing values of equality and tradition and divine institution and family. And the question is, which one of those really apply to how this issue ought to be handled? Okay. I won't get into the specifics of that as it pertains. I mean, I'm a Catholic, so you can guess where I stand on that, but leave that aside. And in the book, we have this issue of euthanasia for people who have severe radiation poisoning, and it's mercy on the one hand, that they ought to be killed. They have to be able to end their lives for the sake of mercy. And then on the other hand of the novel, we have this ethic of life within the church. And so again, two good values, and the question is which one ought to be applied in the case of that issue. And so it's a brilliant picture of modernism. So this is really almost a historical novel more than anything else. It's a novel about the church. It's a novel about how the church carries on in the midst of everything around it changing. In that sense, it's very similar to another liturgical sci-fi novel, Anathema, by Neil Stephenson, even though that's not, it takes place in a larger monastic setting, but it's a religious or non-religious even monastic setting, but still that same principle that the liturgy sustains itself while everything around it changes. The liturgy is the constant. The liturgy is that which continues. And I find that theme very, very beautiful. Before I was a Catholic, and I'm a relatively recent convert, I've been a Catholic for less than a year right now. My journey to conversion began a few years ago, but I joined the church Easter 2012. And in terms of being a Catholic, before my conversion, there was a sense where growing up and then living as an adult and ultimately serving in ministry in a non-liturgical tradition, I looked at the Catholic liturgy, or really all liturgical traditions, and felt like that seems very lifeless to me. It seems like it's just repetition and repetition and repetition, and where's the life in that? Okay, and I'm sure a lot of evangelicals and non-Catholic, non-Christians feel that way. Now, as a Catholic, though, I have the 100% opposite view. The liturgy is life. The liturgy is what sustains us in the middle of everything else in our world changing. The liturgy is the constant. And it doesn't matter how I come to Mass. It doesn't matter if I come to Mass as happy to be there, frustrated to be there, checking my watch, wanting to get out of there, whatever. The liturgy is the constant. And to be a Catholic is to submit to being drawn into that constant. Okay? So, to me, that's part of what really gets conveyed in this novel, is that we have the world going, from here to here to here, all over the place in terms of this secular history that Miller describes for us. And in the middle of that, the liturgy is the constant. And I found this particularly beautiful in terms of the one of the final passages in this book, where the abbot is dying, the people around him are dying. He's administering the Eucharist and saying Lord, I am not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word, and my soul shall be healed. And this element of the Mass that is eternal and timeless and has been with us and sustained us in the midst of the horror of the nuclear holocaust the characters are undergoing in this book. And that was very powerful for me to read because I say the same thing. Now, he says in Latin, I say it in the vernacular. So we say these same words. I say these same words in the Mass, and they apply to me in my normal mundane life, and they apply to him in the moment of apocalypse. And there's this powerful sense of liturgy that this novel conveys. So I loved it. I think this is a great, great novel. I think it deserves to be considered one of the great science fiction novels of all time. I'm simply at a loss as to why anyone else thinks that. Because this is a novel that feels written for me. And I don't entirely understand what the appeal would be to somebody who isn't more or less where I am. And I say more or less because obviously there's Protestants who are in liturgical traditions. Okay, I can see them getting this, or even non-Christians who are in a more liturgical tradition. I see them getting this, but beyond that, it just doesn't make sense to me why somebody, if you, and I want to be careful with my words here, but if you consciously or unconsciously, explicitly or implicitly reject a liturgical life, and I hope that's not stating it too strongly. I don't want to be offensive to my evangelical, non-Christian friends. But if you're in a tradition, maybe soften it by putting it that way, that implicitly or explicitly rejects a liturgical life, I honestly am not sure how you can really understand what this book is trying to say. And obviously, people seem to get it. And they seem to embrace it. So there's something here I'm not seeing. I would like to see it. But either way, I'm glad that this book is embraced, even though I don't quite get what the appeal would be to people who don't fall under certain criteria in terms of how they think and how they view the world. But for myself, brilliant novel, 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It fully expresses what I experience when I go to Mass on a weekly basis, and why it is that even if I turn my back on Catholicism tomorrow, which I would never do, but even if I said, you know what, I'm going to be a Protestant, I could never be in a non-liturgical tradition. Again, because liturgy just sums up our world and the way that I view the world and the way that I view life so fundamentally that I could never go to a non-liturgical tradition and submit to that. Again, I just couldn't. That's just so different from how I think now in my post-conversion. So for me, as somebody who fits that criteria, this is a great, great novel. So whether you're, on board with what I'm saying about liturgy or not, whatever. I hope you enjoyed the novel. I hope you've read it. If you haven't read it, I hope you do, and that you think about what it's saying. And maybe even if you're a non-Catholic, it helps you to understand the Catholic worldview just a little bit better, even if you're not ready to quite, join out with the church and all that good stuff that I've done. Hopefully at least encourages some of that ecumenical interfaith understanding that we need so well and so much in our world. So anyway, 5 stars for Canticle of Leibowitz. I loved it. I think it's a great book. And I guess that's all for now. I'm Ben DeGono, and this is the Sci-Fi Christian Book Reviews. Goodbye.